Hey everybody, what's going on? It's the 1218 show. My name is Mike Wilson. I am your host. Welcome back. This is episode 17. Been a minute. Getting caught up here. I'm starting getting things kind of sorted out schedule-wise, so I'm able to start doing a little more often. This week, I think I'm going to tell a story. I put a lot of thought into what topic I want to talk about each week, because I'm one of those people that I'm not an expert in anything, but I know a little bit of something about almost everything. And I think that that's kind of I think that's kind of fun. And as we've talked about before, my interests are so vast that I just love learning about everything. So, but I don't know. I oftentimes find myself struggling. What do I want to talk about? What do I know enough about that I feel like I can pass on the knowledge? I've had a couple of disappointments here recently. I've had a couple of interviews lined up, and then they've fallen through for one reason or another. One of them, I'm hoping I can still make it happen. I've got let's call him a buddy. Guy I've known for 20 years, and he's a street guy. He lives on the streets. He's homeless. He's junkie, heroin addict, but he's been sober now for almost 2 years. And I talked to him recently and asked him if he knew what a podcast was, and he said he did. He's like, "Yeah, man, I'd love to do it with you." So I've tried to line it up, and I've had him scheduled twice, and he no-showed on me. Not that I'm surprised. I mean, this is I'm certainly not foolish enough to think that he's going to keep a real schedule, but he is sober now, and I'm happy for him. And I think he's such an interesting story, and interesting character. And I mean, I saw this guy high for 20 years. So now that he's sober, and he's older now, and he about half the time he's in a wheelchair. He just got a bum knee or a bum leg or something. But living on the streets is hard on you, man. And so anyway, I'm hoping that there's still a way that I can get him on the show. If I can, it'll be one of my favorite ones. I'm certain of it, because it'll be so interesting. I mean, how many times do you get to legitimately sit down and talk to somebody who's lived that kind of life? And I'm just curious about it. So I'm hoping that we can get him on. Anyway, that's been a little bit of the delay, because I didn't put up shows in between, because I was planning and setting up, and I even bought a mobile power station to so that I could do the interview outside. And we scheduled something for last Friday, so a week ago today, and he didn't show up. And then I haven't had a chance in between now and then. But in the meantime, I think often what I'm trying to what topics to talk about. And I often people are generally say to me, "Mike, just tell some of your New York stories or your bar stories and things like that." When you're stuck for one. So I've been kind of compiling a list of some of the crazy stories that I've experienced in my 22 years now of living in New York City. It's been quite a roller coaster ride. And so last week I was golfing. I had a day where I had the afternoon, and went to a buddy of mine, a buddy of mine and one of his good friends, who I now consider a buddy as well. The three of us went golfing for a day. We had a fourth, but they weren't able to make it at the last minute. That's all beside the point. I'm rambling right now. Anyway, we were just hashing out stories that afternoon, as you're on the back nine waiting for the next tee to open up. He reminded me of a story, and I was like, man, that's a good one for the podcast, so I think I'm going to share it. Years ago, so we're talking 10 plus years ago. So I have a good friend who is I don't even know how to explain it. She's a 10. She's a model. She was in Playboy back in the mid 2000s. She's been in runway shows, and I'm just, she's just one of those beauties that when she shows up, the entire room turns to look. And I met her working at the bar. She lived on the block here, and we generated a really fun, really cool friendship, relationship, hung out quite a bit, and it was always fun to go out with her. Just if we'd go to a club once in a while, or just even if it was just hanging out in bars or whatever, because you walk into the place with her and literally it's like you hear the record go because she's just one of those people. And I do intend, she lives now in Florida, but I do intend to get her on the show as well. I'm only telling you this piece of the story because it fits into the story that I'm actually going to tell. I should also mention that she's also a pianist. She's actually a very talented piano player. And in addition to all of the beauty and the looks and the success that she had modeling, so years ago, I lived. My roommate Aaron, who has been on the show, we were working on some just some music stuff, and we had found out that Lace, my friend Lace, her name's Lace. My friend Lace could play the piano. We didn't even know that. So we were putting together some stuff. Aaron had a music group going, a band. We were trying to figure out where she could plug in and play for us, play some music with some of the artists that he was working with, singing and stuff. And so one night we had she was coming over to play or practice or do a little rehearsal or something to that effect. I'm not exactly sure why, but what it was. But okay, now let me back up. So on our floor in our old apartment, there was across the hall from us was a brothel. You heard that right, a brothel, hookers. So when they first kind of moved on to the floor, I thought it was like this dude selling weed. Because when he first moved on there, the weed was just emanating from his apartment all the time. Well, then I started seeing different girls at different times coming in and out. And then I caught a couple different times some guys like coming off the elevator, and like they would come off the elevator and turn towards that apartment, and the door would like open quickly. They would go in and close. So, the clues were there, and I was like, oh man, they're running hookers out of there. So I was annoyed because I had we had company. My roommate Aaron and I had friends coming and going all the time. We had girlfriends and people that would come over to rehearse with us, and all kinds of different. We just had traffic too, and we certainly didn't want anybody to feel unsafe in our building. We live on the Upper East Side, and it was a dingy little shoebox apartment, but it was supposedly one of the safer neighborhoods in the city. Well, I started noticing some trends, and on the Friday or a Saturday night, there would be a couple of them mingling outside the door there, essentially waiting for calls. Is what I'm guessing, or waiting for orders from the guy. So the guy that lived in this apartment over there had rented it. Now the conclusion of this story, is kind of crazy, but I had kind of generated a friendliness with these girls that we would say hello, put it that way. Hey, how you doing? Whatever, that kind of thing. They were friendly. I thought nothing of it. I was like, well, that's what they want to do. It's whatever. But again, it was annoying because of the in calls, like the inbound, the people that would come to the apartment for their trick or whatever. I didn't want strange men in this building. My girl had a daughter. She was welcome anytime in my apartment, and oftentimes if there was a time gap between when her mom was getting off work or whatever, I'd have she'd come over, and she was at the time, I don't know, 9-10 years old. So I didn't. There was a lot of. I had some concerns with this because I didn't like these creeps in our building. So I mentioned it to our super at the time, and he was just like, yeah. And so I didn't really know what else to do. I didn't, I guess I should have been a little more aggressive and called the cops or whatever. But I also don't consider myself a rat or a narc. I'm like, so far I haven't, outside of the few dudes that I don't like coming in and out of the building. So I kind of just turned a blind eye. So let's fast forward. So this goes on for, I don't know, well over a year. Maybe probably over 2 years. So we, one night, fast forward to the point I had left off with Lace. One night, I met her somewhere, and we had planned to meet up and then come back to the crib and work on this piece of music. So I meet her, whatever. We were talking about something. I think we were taking some B-roll shots of some, with the camera in some city. She was working on some video or something. So we come back to the apartment, and when the elevator door opens, we step out, and there's 5 or 6 NYPD police officers in the hallway, kind of gathered around where this apartment was, which was just across the hallway from my building, my apartment. So I walk off. Now Lace is right behind me, and she's half dolled up. She never left the apartment without looking good. So I step off the thing. She's right behind me, and we start. And I see the cops or whatever, and they kind of turn to look at me, and then they take a double take at her. And so I just nonchalantly said, "Oh, you caught the hookers, huh?" And they kind of looked at me or whatever, and Lace and I go into my apartment. So I thought it was a funny little joke. She didn't really know what I was talking about. So we get in, and I tell her the quick story, and it's not 2 minutes later, and there's a tap, tap, tap on my door. I'm like, fuck! I had to open my mouth. So I open the door, and there's 2 or 3 officers standing there. "Hi, I'm Detective so-and-so from whatever Vice Squad or whatever, I don't remember." He said, "So you mentioned the hookers?" And I was like, yeah. And he goes, "Well, what can you tell me about them?" And so I said, "Not much. I mean, I see them, from time to time. I let our super know about it." He said, "You don't have any more information than that?" I said, "Really, the only thing I could tell you is that the fat ones stay in and the skinny ones go out." And I didn't really realize what I was saying. I was just saying what I had observed, because the girls that were like the tall, thin, kind of sexier hookers, they were going out calls. They were waiting to go to places to turn their tricks. And the guys that were coming to the building, every time I saw her open the door, it was there were 2 or 3 different kind of fat chicks, big girls that would open the door. And so and again, I was young and not politically correct, and I was like, "Yeah, man, the skinny ones go out and the fat ones stay in." And so they didn't want to laugh, but it was clearly that they wanted to, like that they were hiding it. And I kind of chuckled. I don't know. I thought it was funny, but I was just telling the truth. And so they were like, "Okay, listen," and then they gave me a card and said, "Listen, if you see, like, this apartment's not going to be, is vacated now. If you see any other activity from anybody, please give us a call right away." And they gave me a detective's card, a detective number, and that was that. Now here's the conclusion of the story. What was it? Maybe 3-4 days later, the New York Post runs the article. And this is too long ago. I wish I could look it up. I mean, to archive it, it'd probably take me forever to find the story. But the story was, so the guy that lived in that apartment, now he was not an imposing figure. I mean, I would guess he was 5'8", 5'9", relatively thin. Mentioned a lot of times he had like a Bible in his hand, said he was part of a church group. So one time I saw him in the mailbox or something. Like, as far as I knew, he was running some kind of church retreat or whatever. And then that was when he had first moved in. And then when I saw that they were running hookers out of that, I was like, this is the pimp that they got? I mean, this guy ain't shit, right? So it was kind of a weird dynamic. Well, when the Post ran the story, apparently, and again, it's the Post, and again, it's the news, which these days we know that they don't ever get anything right anyway. But the Post, the story was, this guy had gone down, these girls were all Southern girls, and he had gone down to, I want to say the Carolinas, maybe Georgia, Alabama, maybe Mississippi, and recruited these girls, but brought them up here under false pretenses. They said, hey, according to the Post, they'd bring them up with modeling and acting possibilities, and so these girls were young and excited. And so when they got up here, he would say, okay, we got we're ready, we're going to get some stuff. I just need to, get your IDs and your social security cards and all that stuff. And then he would, to photocopy them or whatever bullshit line he gave them. And then he just took them, just stole them and said, you're not getting these back. You're now a hooker. You're working for me. And if you do anything or tell anything, we'll kill your family. Like, that was the story. And so these girls were forced into it in a weird way, because they were too scared, obviously, for obvious reasons. I mean, this is essentially human trafficking, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the things that's going on in the world. But these were hookers that, when I would see them in the hallway or whatever, they seemed in good spirits, for lack of I didn't see anything abnormal about the way they were behaving. But it kind of broke my heart, because we had that sort of camaraderie, right? Where, like, we'd said hello, we talked to, in the hallways, and, how you doing? Hey, what's up? You guys having a good night? Yeah, whatever. They were friendly, they were smiley, they were pretty, and it just kills me that one of them never, slipped me a note. Or just sit, or, I mean, I know that he was probably right on the other side of the door there, and thinking back, kind of standing in the hallway, sitting on the steps, waiting to go out. He was probably on the laptop in the other room, working, trying to find the gig. And it's always bothered me, because I'm like, man, all you had to do was just say, hey, we need help, but you got to be cool. And I would have been I would have been all over it. I'd have been like, all right, yeah, I would have went to the cops, went and said, listen, this is the scenario. These guys have begged for help, but they're very scared. There's help out there, and there's people that are willing to do it if you just if they just knew that, And I'm sure they were scared. I'm sure that whatever threats they dealt with were, god awful. But it's, God, it just, looking back on it, the story is funny and tragic all at the same time, because, and obviously these girls got sent home and reconnected with their family, but not after they were traumatized for life. They came up here with a promise of fame and stardom, and they got forced into being hookers. I mean, that's an awful, awful, awful story, in a lot of ways. But it is a New York experience, and it is entertaining in a very dark way. So, I thought that's what I would share for this week. That is the podcast for today. This is number 17. I'm loving it. I'm going to get some more trivia episodes up. I also am going to put up Spring Break Millennium 1, the episode that Aaron and I think we talked about it, and I've had a couple of people say, man, you should just load that into YouTube so we can listen to it. So I'm going to do that. Aaron's cool with it. I'm going to put that up here. I was going to make it into a slideshow and all this, and I'm like, I'm just going to put a title screen up so people can hear it, because I know a lot of you haven't heard it. And Aaron eventually is going to get a podcast. Spotify. Get those loaded into Spotify too, but we'll put it up on YouTube here soon. I'm going to get some more trivia up. I'm going to get some more original music up. I think there's going to be I'm putting on a concert in the spring, musical concert. Of like a cabaret type show. I'm doing some stand up again, so everything's kind of moving in the right direction. I'm very excited. So we're gonna do some. Oh man, I lost my recording here. But anyway, piece of shit. Okay, all right. I don't know where that cut off. But anyway, we're gonna get some. get some. Yeah, all right. So just so you know, my computer just overheated here and stopped the audio record. So there's going to be a little gap there. I apologize. What I missed, I'm not sure. But I want to thank you all for listening. I want to thank you for your time, and I hope that we get another episode up soon. I got a company coming in this weekend, and I'm very excited about it. I'm not going to spoil the surprise, and I think that I'm going to have him on the podcast. We could talk about 1,000 different topics, literally 1,000 topics. I've known this guy since I was in first grade. So there's 40 years of friendship. So there's more than we could ever fit into podcasts. But I don't know what we're going to talk about this particular week. I hope that I have him on the show, and we will. It should generate some good conversation. Anyway, bless you all. I hope you're having a wonderful summer, and I hope you're all just staying healthy, staying happy. Much love to you, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.